Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Nurse Babe Britt, and in today's video, I am going to discuss CVICU nurse training. Now, if you are new to my channel, then I have previously recorded a video that details my personal experience of working as a CVICU nurse, so I am going to tag that video below. Please watch that video. This video is going to be more of a refresher of what the CVICU nurse training looks like today versus when I started 4 years ago. So I've been in CVICU for 4 years, almost 5 now. I also recently tapped into my PACU nurse era, so I started doing that last year. And honestly, if you can do, and this is just extra, but if you can do CVICU and recover those patients, you can recover any patient. But moving along. So the CVICU nurse training for a new graduate nurse versus an experienced nurse is going to differ a little bit, mainly in how long your orientation is. You're going to get some of the same classes. You're going to get all the same classes on the devices. So anything cardiac specific, so that includes our balloon pumps, impellers, ECMO devices, CRT, even though you use that in other ICUs, CRT, which is our dialysis device, LVAD devices. You're eventually going to take an ECMO class. I don't know if I mentioned that already, but all of the devices that are CVICU specific, you're going to have classes on that, whether you're an experienced nurse or a new graduate nurse. So that does not change. You're all in the same class. And usually they like for you to take those classes before you actually start working with the device with your preceptor, so that way you have an idea of what's going on. Obviously, you're not going to be, you wouldn't have mastered it yet, but at least you'll have exposure to it. And the orientation usually varies between 4 to 6 months long. I've seen some orientations where they're only 3 months long if it's an experienced nurse, especially a critical care experienced nurse that just is new to cardiac. But for new graduate nurses, it is going to be a little bit longer just because, you're a new nurse to the field, so they're going to put a little bit more extra time into educating you on some of the nursing things that some of the experienced nurses probably already got on their unit where they came from. Now, depending on if you're at a teaching hospital versus a nurse-driven hospital, that really does determine how long your orientation is probably going to be. From what I've seen and from my personal experience, teaching hospitals typically have a little bit of a longer orientation period than those that are nurse-driven. And that may honestly be because there's a lot of classes, like additional classes you take. Like when I was a new graduate nurse, in addition to all the device classes I had to take, we also took just strictly critical care classes that all new grad ICU nurses, we were all a part of. It was online, like a Zoom, but we had to take those classes as well. So that could be something. As far as the reason, I don't know, but that's just what I've seen. As far as online education goes, you do have to do something called ECHO modules. It's just critical care orientation online, pretty much. It is a lot of information, but it is very helpful. It's very valuable. It does break it down for you. And you go at your own pace, and you are paid for that time. So depending on your hospital and your unit, they may require you to do those modules come into work and do those modules, or they may allow you to do it from home. I was fortunate enough to be able to do it from home, but that was also during COVID. So I'm not sure. It really just depends on the hospital, but you do have a lot of online education that you have to do as a new graduate nurse, and also as an experienced nurse. If you don't have critical care experience, and let's say you come from med-surg or the OR or wherever, then you are also going to be expected to do those modules because that is critical care specific, and it is a lot of information. Now, as far as when you're on the unit, you're going to be paired with a preceptor. Usually you have 2 preceptors. So if one isn't available, your primary preceptor isn't available, then you're usually with your secondary preceptor. Sometimes, depending on the staffing, I will say, I'll just be honest with you, you may get bounced around between different preceptors from time to time if that unit is struggling with staff and they can't really, dedicate one solid primary preceptor to you. Sometimes you get bounced around. And of course that has its own frustrations. The main frustration being that if you're with a new nurse that has never worked with you before, they don't know what you know. So you spend a lot of your shift trying to catch them up on what you know, and then they can start from that point and teach you what you know need experience with or whatever. So that has its own frustrations, but in an ideal world, on an ideal unit, you only have 1 to 2 preceptors. On a bad day, you might get randomly paired with someone like a third preceptor, but it's not that often. Usually, most of your orientation is going to be on day shift, and then if you're going to be working night shift, then the end of your orientation is on. So let's say if you have 4 months of orientation, then the first 3 months is day shift, and the last month is typically night shift. Or let's say you have 6 months of orientation. This is how it was for me. 4 months day shift, 2 months night shift. I got shorted a month, so I only had 5 months of orientation. But anyway, that's how the plan was. So regardless of, sorry, my dog is tapping my ring light. Bentley. Let's see. I am a dog mom, and I have to show y'all my baby. So this is who's tapping our light. So if it's shaking, he's the reason. This is Bentley. But anyway, so the orientation, that's typically how it is, whether you're going to be day shift or night shift. Now, if you're going to stay on days after orientation, then typically, let me put him down so it won't focus on him anymore. If you're going to stay on day shift after orientation, then typically what I have seen is that the entire time you're on orientation, you should stay on days. Stop, please. The entire time you're going to stay on days. But if you are going to transition to night shift, then part of your orientation is day shift, and then the last quarter of your orientation is going to be night shift. So that is what I have seen. And after you get off orientation, I'll say this, you're never going to feel like you're just absolutely 100% ready to get off orientation. I've never heard a new grad say that. I've never, really heard even some experienced nurses, because transitioning from, let's say if you come from med surg, OR, labor and delivery, and you start working in the CVICU, it's totally different. It's completely different. And so sometimes even experienced nurses get the jitters of, oh, like, am I ready to get off orientation? Do I need like another week or two? So I will say you won't always feel 100% ready, but you are more ready than you believe you are. And when you get off orientation, they shouldn't. I would say this, and I have not seen this happen no matter what hospital I've worked at, even when it's short staff. They won't just throw you out there to the wolves. Even if it's a bad day, even if it's short staff, at least someone around you is going to be an experienced nurse, or the charge nurse should come, check on you throughout your shift and make sure you're okay if it is a very busy, hectic assignment that, they were forced to give you because they didn't have an option. That is typically what will happen, but from what I've seen, for the most part, you won't be thrown out there to the wolves. You won't have the sickest patient on the unit. You won't be admitting your first shift off orientation. Like, that's just not how that goes. But with time, they will slowly start giving you more difficult patients with more devices, and then you'll start doing your admission shifts. And usually you do your admission shift with a nurse that's dedicated to doing admissions, or either the nurse educator. You'll do like maybe 2 or 3 shifts with them, and then you're going to start admitting patients. And those admission shifts are separate usually from your orientation. So even if on orientation you get the exposure of being able to admit several patients, you still have to do admission shifts after you've gone off orientation. You still have to do admission shifts with someone that does that on the regular, to make sure that you are prepared to admit any type of patient. So that's just a quick rundown of what the CVICU nurse training is like. I will say there is a lot of education involved when it comes to transitioning to the CVICU, no matter where you come from, whether it's nursing school or whether it's a different unit. It is a lot of education. It is a very high acuity, so just be prepared for that. But that is usually what it is like. When I precept nurses, whether they're experienced or new nurses to the field, I always start by asking them, like, okay, you know, what do you feel like you struggle with the most? What do you need me to help you with the most? We can, you know, start there and just, you know, go from there. So if it's an experienced nurse, sometimes it might just be the charting system, or it may be a refresher on certain protocols that we do, or it may be a refresher on how to change CRT bags, or troubleshoot the CRT machine, or troubleshoot the LVAD, you know, to make sure the alarms are working. Like, it could be different things like that. Versus a new graduate nurse may say, okay, well, I want to work with more devices. I want to take more patients who are on a balloon pump. I want to learn how to analyze the strips. I want to learn how to, you know, pull chest tubes or bulb chest tubes, or pull central lines, or put in, you know, NG tubes. Like, it could be so many different things. So I always like to start by asking. A lot of times it is good practice for your preceptors to ask you, okay, what is it that you feel like you struggle with the most? And then what do you feel like are your strengths? And just going from there. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to just type them down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Turn your notifications on so you can be the first to know when I post my next video. And thank you guys for watching. I'll see you soon.